Hello and welcome to the Backfield, the Running Back Analysis Podcast. I'm Big Italy 42. He is Jason Gilbo at JGilbo11. We're talking about, of course, top running backs for Week 15, and a lot of meaningful games now with only 3 weeks left in the season. So one of them being the Vikings against the Bears. So that brings us to the only offensive player in the Vikings that's really worth having week-to-week basis, and Adrian Peterson. Vegas team total just over 24 points here for this team, and we know that as far as volume running backs in the NFL, there aren't a lot of them that still actually get 20 carries a game. Only problem with Adrian Peterson is game flow. If a team gets behind by a lot, I mean, his day is pretty much done. He gets no utilization in the passing game for the most part. But either way, don't really imagine that Chicago's going to get a huge lead against this Minnesota defense. So Adrian Peterson should be safe for his big workload, and already had some success against them last time out.
Yeah, he rushed for 103 yards on 20 carries, 5.2 yards per carry their last game, and didn't find the end zone, but he's been finding the end zone plenty of late. He's faced a couple tough defenses, Seattle and Arizona, the last 2 weeks. So, I mean, he's really your safest option. He's going to get 20 plus carries. He's facing a Bears defense that just really isn't good in the run defense anymore, but definitely better than they used to. But they're still ranked last, so it just shows how bad they've been the past couple of years.
Yeah, and like you mentioned, their third highest yards per carry to opposing backs, 4.7 yards. So Peterson's still one of the best, despite being technically over the hill at 30 now. So next up after him, Devonta Freeman, a guy who off to a monster start early in the season. Really not necessarily his fault. The rest of the team around him just playing awful. Matt Ryan, no horrible quarterback play. I mean, it's been opposing defenses have tried to take him out of the running game, but that's all well and good with Devonta Freeman because Matt Ryan's still competent enough to get him the ball in the passing game, at least when the running game's not working. And that gives him a nice high floor every week, as we see. And certainly still has that big upside. You imagine Jacksonville will be able to score points against them this week. So could see Devonta Freeman have one of his big games out of the backfield once again.
Yeah, I mean, it was a tough call because I was between him and D'Angelo Williams as that elite play. But, I mean, Denver's still a team I don't really like to target. I didn't like to target D'Angelo Williams against Cincy last week, but kind of they got up and they were able to just run. But he wasn't really efficient outside of the 2 touchdowns. But Freeman, Jacksonville's been a pretty good defense. They rank 11th per Football Outsiders, just a 3.6 yards per carry allowed. But, I mean, he's one of the elite backs in the league, I think. And, on a full point PPR scorer like DK, you really like his upside and floor in the passing game. But if I'm leaning towards paying for one on FanDuel, it's definitely Peterson.
Next up, Eddie Lacy, who over the past 4 weeks, if you take away the Detroit game, has actually been pretty solid. Obviously, the Packers offense, well, I'm not going to say it goes through him, but obviously the passing attack hasn't been nearly what it has been in the past without Jordy Nelson this season. So they need a consistent running game, and Eddie Lacy finally producing for them recently. Now facing an Oakland team that played admirably on defense last week, but that's also against the Broncos offense that, regardless of who's under center, has been pretty awful all season long. So still a big game for the Packers. They're still battling for playoff position in the NFC. So you got to imagine going to see a full workload for Eddie Lacy here this week, and his price is still pretty low for a guy who has been productive in 3 of the last 4 weeks.
Yeah. I mean, 320 yards and 329 yards in the last 3 games outside of that Detroit game, 5.3 yards per carry in that span. So he's looked really good, looked like the old Eddie Lacy. Oakland's a decent front seven. Pretty average run defense, allowing a 4.2 yards per carry and just 101 rushing yards per game. But Green Bay, 25-point team total tonight or this week. And, I mean, the prices are really what makes them an attractive play.
Yeah, absolutely. So he's the guy that will certainly be on my radar as well. Next up, Lamar Miller, the guy who has been kind of a frustrating play this year. We know he has the upside when he gets touches, but Miami didn't get touches early in the year with Joe Philbin. Then you bring in Dan Campbell, and he got touches. Then he didn't get touches, and they want to establish a run, but then they don't. So it's kind of hard to see what he's going to get as far as touches. But when he gets touches, he's productive. And matchups aren't going to get much better than this one against San Diego here. And like you mentioned, there is some risk to this play. But, I mean, he's been very productive with the touches that he's gotten, though.
Yeah, I mean, it's not his fault. I mean, really, it's a great matchup. He's been great this season. It's just that moronic coaching staff. I have no idea what they're doing. And it doesn't matter who's in for the coaching staff because we've seen multiple ones this year. But, I mean, each way you can't trust him for touches. But I mean, the matchup's just really too good to pass up, and his price. I mean, he has monster upside. San Diego's a lot of 4.8 yards per carry to opposing backs, 126 yards per game, and 12 touchdowns this season. So you're really hoping Miller sees at least 15 touches because he's definitely going to capitalize either way.
Yeah, absolutely. I like that. And I mean, he's made some big plays in the passing game as well. So certainly a guy that does have that big upside. Next up, GPP play Jeremy Hill. You mentioned San Francisco. Their defense has played better at home, but we got Andy Dalton out for at least the foreseeable future, maybe the season. We don't really know. It's obviously not a good situation there. But Hugh Jackson said they're not going to get away from what they're doing on offense. I don't believe that as much as he liked to say that there's just going to be the same exact offense without Andy Dalton, with AJ McCarron under center. But you know they're going to be establishing the run this week either way. Jeremy Hill's the type of bruiser, the type of running back that we could see get 20-plus carries in this spot. And although the 49ers have played better at home, this is a defense that just got gashed by the Browns. And your defense isn't just a better run defense just because you're playing in your home field.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at Isaiah Crowell, 150 yards and 2 touchdowns with what he's done this season, give me a break. Your defense is terrible. I don't care where you're playing. And, 49ers have just been, bad all season. I know they've kind of let us down when we picked on them a couple times already, but Jeremy Hill, he's a big red zone guy. And, the only worry for me, which makes him a tournament play, is just because Giovanni Bernard, if he does get hot, maybe Bernard starts out hot and Hill not so much. You could see Cincinnati lean that way for the rest of the game.
Yeah, like you said, that's the only main concern there. But I do still expect a pretty run-heavy attack. And if the Bengals get up big, which they certainly could against that 49ers defense, then either way, you should see both guys get plenty of touches.
Yeah, Hill has the second most rushing touchdowns in the red zone this season, so tied with Cam Newton,
Yeah. and when you get down there, I'd much rather have Jeremy Hill run the ball inside the 5 than Giovanni Bernard also. So, and they'll get creative with things too, as the Hugh Jackson's done this year. Sometimes a little bit too much, but certainly going to find ways to get all of his playmakers involved with Dalton out. Next up, David Johnson, the guy who's just been tremendous recently with everyone else out for Arizona. Just jumped from the 3rd spot up to the 1, and facing the Philly defense that is, one of the worst in all of football. They've been very inconsistent. Even the game against the Patriots that they won, everyone wants to credit their defense and things like that. That was just a good team effort. No part of the team was great. All the parts were good. And David Johnson involved in the passing game, the running game, and he's looked really good. Like, he looks like the guy that should have been the guy from day one in Arizona.
Yeah, you look at the Philly defense, and they're more just a playmaking defense than anything. They're not really stopping teams. Yeah. They've allowed the 8th highest yards per carry to opposing backs this season. And you look at Johnson's work rate. 41 carries the last 2 weeks on 4.7 yards per carry. So he has 8 touchdowns this season, even when he's been back and forth on the depth chart. So he's been getting in the end zone. And you got to look at this total here, which is pretty close to 28 points, 4 touchdowns. And you got to just look at Arizona as being one of the dominant offenses this week. And I think Johnson's a pretty safe play.
Yeah, especially if they get out to a big lead, which they certainly could. See him gets extra carries late in this one. So definitely a good spot for him there, and at a nice price tag as well.
Yeah.
All right, that'll wrap things up here for us for Week 15. Find us on Twitter at DF Cafe. Subscribe to this YouTube channel and check out all the rest of our content at dailyfantasycafe.com.